field day with me. No, is that Mary out there?
I don't see her.
This is River Ridge Mayor Council first budget meeting of the year, Saturday, January 13th. Take a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Bastide?
Here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Here.
Councilman Aquafrida? Councilwoman Davis? Councilman Kiningo?
Here.
Mayor Mignon?
Here. And maybe we just want to introduce our Citizens Budget Committee for the record.
Just give us your name.
Anthony Marbury, Albert Rowland, Jonathan Peter, Anthony Arturi, Ken Crowder.
Very good. Okay, Alan, floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Welcome, everybody, once again.
Everybody just look up for a second and smile. All right, thanks. He's going to blame you guys when we're...
That's right, that's what that was for.
You know, the council could have changed, you know, it wasn't for that Citizen Budget Committee.
Starting with a blank screen.
Yeah. And I just saw a couple of Davis that just come in, so it should be in a minute. So go ahead.
Yes, first let me say that our tentative meeting dates are posted to the website. These are open public meetings, which means the public is invited to attend and listen. They are advertised as such and conducted that way. We keep minutes of the meetings as well. The material that you have in front of you, you have a brown notebook in front of you. It won't be necessary to take this every week, but this is what I call the library, and it has some information in here that we've used over the years that might be of interest to everybody. For instance, there's a directive from the state of New Jersey with regard to over expenditures, and I'd like to use this to remind everybody that it's our job to create a responsible budget so that we don't have over expenditures during the year. And there are other things in here that might be of interest as we go along. The library strategic plan is in here. There's a schedule of sewer payments, an explanation of the third of the bill, and so on and so forth. So this information is here. You know, it's historical, it's informative, and it might be of assistance to us. Everybody will have a red notebook, which will have current correspondence in it. And the correspondence that we have in there right now, we have information from the state, which does indicate that our state schedule has been extended. The introduction date is going from February 10th to March 16th, so that does give us a little bit more time to put this together. One challenge that our finance department has this year, and myself, is that there's a new electronic filing system for all of our financials and the budget document. We have a state document that we have to fill out, and it's all being done electronically. And it's still in the development stages, but we are obligated to use it this year. So that will be an interesting experiment as we go forward. The other correspondence in here, and I do encourage you to take a look at this, we have a request from the REBAS for a generator replacement. Councilman Papaleo, you asked about the percentages of the different departments. That's contained on correspondence 10. Each piece of the correspondence will have a letter and a number in the upper right-hand corner, just to indicate numerically when we place it into your book. So the correspondence section will continue to grow. In addition, you'll have a tab for a position summary, and we'll give you a hard copy of that every week, every time we meet, so that you can take notes on that, since the information will be up on the screen. But we'll give you a copy of that, and then you also will have all of the requests for capital. And we'll give you a capital summary every time we meet to show any updates in that as well. If you take your red book home, which you're certainly invited to do, Just be advised that if there was filing during the week, we will leave it on a table for you, and you'll have to file it in to the notebook when you get here yourself. If you leave your notebook here, then we will file the information in there for you. Are there any questions before I anything here? Okay. So, Mayor, would you like to get into the position summary and see the overall submissions by the departments?
Yes, if we need to be waking up, that'll certainly do it.
Let me hand out the hard copy.
And Alan, have we gotten the finance notice on what the allowable increase is gonna be versus having to use the cap, or
I believe it's in there, I'll have to look at it myself and refresh.
I believe it's 0.5% again or something very low.
These are those defibrillators.
On the screen. We need to put it right in your thing.
Yes.
He was right there,
I believe it. John himself. So the first one, position summary.
Yeah, the first one, should have the position.
That's my book. This was my book, I would read those.
So if you look up on the screen, these are the columns that we'll be looking at. We have our account numbers, those two columns on the left-hand side. We have a short description of the item for the budget. It will indicate whether it's other expenses, OE, or S&W, salaries and wages. We'll measure this year's budget against the 2017 adopted budget. We have a paid or committed number for you next to that in terms of what's been expensed or the payable that's been set up on that line for future expenses. To give you an idea, we do maintain the prior year budget, so in 2018, we will still have the 2017 budget with us for any commitments that come in 2018 that should be charged back to the 2018 budget. So last year, we had about $750,000 that we expensed out in the following year back to the prior year budget. Now, 2018 budget submitted to date, that is the column where we have the budgets from the different departments. For the estimates, we calculate $1 change for you, as well as a percent. Okay, let's come down to the bottom line here. I think that's on PS3 for you. Right now, we're looking at an increase of $1,188,138.70, close to an 8% increase. Then we give you a breakdown of the increase without what we call this reserve for uncollected tax, or this RUT number. This is the RUT number here. And this is a number that goes into our budget to calculate the percentage of delinquent taxpayers that we'll have to ensure that we make the full collection of taxes in the current year. So it's not a number that is spent. You can see it's a little over $500,000 last year, but it's required in order that we have a full collection of taxes in the current year. But we pull it out for this purpose here. And we see that the salary and wage number is up $243,000, close to a 4% increase, 3 3/4. And the other expenses, $944,000, really over 11%. Just by way of, and then we have an overall number here of the 8% number. Now, just to give you an idea, in the past, we started out, last year we did start out with a $978,000 increase, and we ended up with this $115,000 net change. 16, we were at $1.3 million. We ended up with $117,000. And then here in 15, we started out with $1.4 million. Let's get further, and we ended up with a $312,000 increase. So don't get discouraged, okay? Remember, I always tell the department heads to make your best professional recommendation, and they're approaching it from the viewpoint of providing the best services that they can to the residents as efficiently and effectively as they can. Certainly, you're looking at, their best professional recommendation on these items.
Now, one question, I don't know if you know off the top of your head. In those prior 3 years, did we have any emergencies that we had to account for?
No, for the last several years, we've been able to work without any emergency budgets. But this year, we're confronted with $188,706 in emergencies that we needed to have in 2017. The way this works is that because the state of New Jersey's accounting system is so conservative, if you have an emergency in the current year, which we did in 2017, you must raise that emergency, basically pay yourself back for the money you used for that emergency in the next year's budget. So the $188,000 is broken down to additional landfill expenses. We under budgeted that particular area last year, and we needed an emergency appropriation to take care of the last few monthly payments. And the police department, overtime, retirement, as well as some unexpected payments to the county sheriff's department for the repaving the work on Kinnickinnick Road, which we saw last year. The police department needed the assistance of the Bergen County Sheriff's officers, so we had to have an emergency to pay that a number. We did recoup revenue back, but it doesn't get met against the emergency. Revenue would eventually flow to the surplus account. If you wanted to include that as a revenue, you could, to offset this emergency. But yes, ma'am, this is a good point. This is an unusual item in our budget this year, one that we'll have to work with, and a large number.
That works to, like, just by itself, like a 1.5 or a 1.3, right?
One other item here, we had an additional bill on the police and firemen's retirement system. We had settled a contract with them, and they got a retro pay. And several years later, the pension division issued us an additional bill that had to be paid last year as well for the contract that we have with the police department. So that was part of that emergency as well.
Excuse me, Director. This is a bit off center, but just does in my mind. Other than maybe added paperwork with regard to the administration, is prepayment of property taxes. Will that have any? Personally, I don't think it would because it's going to be due. But are you able to share any thoughts about?
Yeah, in past years, I think we've collected maybe a couple $100,000 in prepayments, and we saw close to $3 million come in this year. Now that will certainly improve our cash flow for the first part of the year. Until those taxes are normally tenders. We'll expect to see increased, the cash flow will be good. We can invest that money and earn some interest income off of it. But beyond that, that's the benefit to the borough this year. It was an enormous outflowing of payments to the borough. And I have to compliment Gita because she was involved in handling most of those payments in the office. Our tax collector happened to be away during that time, and Gita and the staff down there really handled that volume of work that took place.
Now, can you just quickly define repayment from the timeline?
Yes, so
Is it before the 31st, or is it before?
before December 31st, so you could pay any taxes that were billed prior to, so we have really first half of 18, a lot of people paid those quarters prior to December 31st.
Regardless of assessment, there is no assessment for 2018.
No, not the the other two quarters that are out, we have as well as that.
Interesting.
Right, so what we allowed was only the first two quarters. And our tax collector will be busy now, refunding overpayments for people who thought they could pay anything and everything. They'll be getting refunds, and our tax collector has a significant job going forward to, do all the accounting and the record keeping on all of that.
When you make a comparison between 300,000 and 3 million, something,
Close to 3 million, 2.9 million.
2.9 million, what is that talking about? Is that just 2017, just before January 1st, 2017? Or is that before February 15th?
Yeah, the February, probably the February and the May quarters, you know. Keep in mind though that we collect 40 million plus in taxes, so it's still not the whole, quarterly amount that we normally collect.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to just maybe just go to where we're starting in terms of the tax increase on the homeowner? And then I'd like you to go back to the budget and maybe highlight some lines where we may not have firm numbers yet.
I haven't really done any work with the tax rate. You can see this is our schedule for the tax rate. If I've colored it yellow, it means I haven't reviewed it or really given it a serious look at this point. I coded white here because we did get a new number from the tax assessor late last week. So you can see it's $1,045,000. So one tax point is going to be $145,000 roughly. We came back to, let's see, a question there. We took the 1,188,138 divided it by 145,000. It's about 8 points times $38 a point. It's about $311. So this $1 million increase is about over $300 right now, without schools or the county or open space or anything like that.
And then in terms of the actual budgets, the big ticket items, as I call them, the pension, insurances, healthcare, those are all pretty firm at this point?
Yes, the pension numbers, we have bills on the health insurance. We have the, in fact, let me go down the line here. We can look at a little bit of these things here. So here we have the group health insurance, and it's up about $11,000. There's no rate increase this year on the health insurance, but we did have some shifting of coverage between our employees. Which they moved, some of them, about 3 of them moved to a more expensive plan. So that's the need for the increase here. We had a copay, $200,000 plus from the employees. I always like to point out that back in the 90s, we had on the plan 74, 72, 69, 70. And currently, we have 50 employees who are on the plan, and 11 are receiving waivers on that. So, the councils over the years, and this includes this council as well, has significantly maintained the discipline to not have a lot of full-time employees. We look for other ways to staff our departments through part-time, hourly people, to avoid the additional cost of the health benefits. And we've pared down that particular number over the years.
And the copay is reflected in that number?
Yes, and the copay is now reflected in this $900,000 number.
Alan, I'm sorry. When you say copay, do you mean their Chapter 78 contributions?
Yes, yeah, that's the contribution by the employees towards.
Alan, is the copay at its maximum now?
Yes, all employees are on their tiers, and if you're not familiar with it, then the employees are on a sliding scale, depending on the amount of their salary. If you're a higher paid employee, then you're going to be paid close to 39%. if you're a lower paid employee, then there's something less that you'll be contributing.
That's the graduate, when it had started.
Yes, and,
Are you at the?
and a couple of our bargaining units have postponed their entrance into those steps, but now, all of the bargaining units are on that scale, and, I believe the police should be up at the top of the scale.
So that should remain flat now.
Yes, but you should know that Chapter 78 does have a sunset date on it, and it is subject to negotiation. The town doesn't have to agree to it, but it's subject to negotiation with bargaining units as to whether they will continue paying into it. So that's a flaw, in my opinion, of the law, is that we have a sunset provision here on this, which is going to allow, in some cases, unions to negotiate out of that copay or a lower copay arrangement. Okay, they asked me to come down the line here, so we can look at some of these other. Let me go back up here for a second. Let's just see. Let's look at the dollar change.
And then we don't have a copy of this, right?
Yes, you have that, I handed it out in the position summary, so you can take notes on the hard copy. All right, so down here, and I have engineering services, $190,000 increase.
Yeah, he's on the first page.
This is always a guess as to how much work we're going to have done and what that work is. I have the schedule on some of the items that you might fill, but certainly there's some flexibility here in terms of the council and the city determining what the engineering needs are. You can see we had a budget of the prior year of $75,000.
Do you want my magnifying glass?
And we did have to notify the engineers that we were out of funding around November. So just keep that in mind when you look at detail. That's certainly a flexible number. In addition, legal services are up slightly. You have to look at the detail that I provided here. We have there's a provision in here for some potential litigation, which the council may decide, it's not going to, we reconcile that potential litigation, or it's not timely this year, so there's flexibility here. If you look at the legal budget, which is up $53,000 as well, those two lines really are discretionary on the part of the council. Here we have liability insurance. This shows a large increase, but we still have to spread this out. It doesn't have a full allocation. You can see some of the lines here are zero, so I have to allocate this $454,000 down here. But you can see like some of the negative numbers would offset this $232,000. So the overall insurance line only has a slight increase. Our liability and workers' comp are provided through the Bergen County Municipal Joint Insurance Fund, and they have a provision where no town receives more than a 5% increase in their insurance. So ours is certainly less than that. It's a pretty good experience, but there's not going to be an overall a large expense here in the insurance area. Okay, coming down here. All right, now some of these are salary and wage accounts, so we'll have to leave these for the moment, but we can talk about overall salary and wages with a point.
What those salary and wages that you're posting, where did they come from?
We have a separate spreadsheet on the salary and wages for the borough. What we do is we take each employee and calculate out what their base salary is and any increases, any potential retirements, hourly employees, and we come to basically a quote on
New hires or anything.
It might, yes, it might, and I'm glad you reminded me of that, because when we talk about the health insurance, if the department has made a request for increases in staffing, which we've included right now in the salaries, and we're certainly not at a final salary picture yet. The Personnel Subcommittee just met the other night to start discussing some of the requests. But we've also included some health coverage for those potential hires this year. So if the Personnel Subcommittee recommends to the full council that we not do some of these hires or prorate those hires, then we have to go back to the health insurance and actually prorate those or pull those coverages out as well. Just on I'll give you an overview since we're questions asked on the salaries and wages. The increase that we included in 2018 for the non-contractual employees is a 2% increase. We have no increase to the mayor and council this year, which has been a long-standing tradition. The PVA and the SOA, we negotiated a 1.75% increase, and the DPW and the library are at a 2% increase as well. Now, you saw before that our overall salaries are up 3.75%, and that's because we have other type of salary obligations in there. We have overtime that gets placed into the department. There are length of service payments that are made. There is holiday pay. There's a lot of different other variables that drive that 2% or that number up. We have step increases. The DPW, the police, and the non-contractual are all on a step scale, so employees do receive on anniversary dates or based on performance an additional stipend, but those are built into that 3.75% as well. Even though the cost of living adjustments are certainly lower. Okay, let's come back to some of the other areas. This is a $10,000 request by the REVAS for a new generator. We can make a contribution to certain entities as long as there's a statute that allows that, and there is with regard to REVAS. But we cannot actually, a private organization, we can't actually do the work for them, but we have made contributions towards new rigs, the roof, things of necessity for the ambulance service. And this year they made a request for a new generator.
I think last year they asked for that too, but they ended up getting it taped and put back together, but it's really, they did. And they spent a lot, money to do that, so.
Okay, thank
That's
you,
why they put it
Councilwoman
back.
Davis, and for the record, Councilwoman Davis is now present.
You know what, let me just explain. Did anybody else hear the fire alarm go off at 2 a.m.?
No.
Okay, and being the fire
I saw the
liaison,
lights
I
on.
know that means that it's a working fire if it goes off in the middle of the night. So now I'm up and I'm out of bed, and it's gas on Manning and Kindergarten. I didn't go, but, so therefore I can go to sleep for another 2 hours, and I was sleeping soundly at 7:30 this morning. So I apologize.
Let's see, some of the other larger expenses, we don't have a large increase in garbage and trash. We do have a contract, it's a 5-year contract that we're working through. It'll be up in 2019, but in 2018 we'll start to look at the garbage and trash removal as well.
Alan, that carries us to the end of 19, is that correct?
It's October
19th.
19th, 15th of 2018.
That garbage, does that include tipping?
No, landfill is in their area. Let's see. Let's come down a little bit more.
Thank you. You'll get to it.
Yeah, it's further.
Okay, let's see. Just looking for okay, here's the landfill down here. Again, there is some flexibility here. You can take a look at the number of what makes that up. But we did have an increase over what was budgeted with 220,000 last year. We probably still have one more bill that's going to come in January or February that'll get charged back to this budget as well. But $58,000 increase here. I'm attributing it to the economy coming back and people actually, you know, replacing furniture and things of that nature, carpeting and things like that. They probably haven't done for many years.
I happened to look at the tonnage numbers that you had on the sheet that you passed out. It looks like the past 3 years, there's been kind of like it's been growing, the increase. Whereas prior, it wasn't as bad. I was curious if there was any thought process as to why it's going up like that.
That's the only thing. Our recycling program hasn't changed. It is becoming more difficult to recycle. The markets out there are not accepting dirty recycling, so it requires that, you know, recycling be done on a more cautious basis. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, but I'm attributing it to the economy some of that. People just having more disposable income and, you know, doing things with that.
There was a couple of stories about how Amazon has affected the cardboard recycling and is increasing the amount of cardboard that has been put back into the system, and it's, I guess, driving the price of recycled cardboard down.
Another one that we have is Bergen County Sewer.
Alan,
Yes.
can you hit the plus at the bottom right to increase, zoom in a little bit? That's good, thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so we're down here, let's see, we're looking at Bergen County Sewer, $59,000 increase. Now, right now, I think I've given that about a 5% increase. Let's see, it shows 6, but about a 5%. I have no information from Bergen County Sewer at this point, so usually that comes a little bit later, even if I ask for it. So we'll actually get an actual bill number once they determine, but usually we do get some sort of a slight increase in this particular area. Hopefully it won't be, you know, close to the $59,000. We'll have to wait and see. Okay, and then we have the retirement systems down here. We have a $24,000 increase on the PBRS. Down here by the fire, we have a $43,000 increase. I know you read about the state of the retirement systems in the state of New Jersey, but what we can say about that is those articles that are pessimistic are really pointing to the state retirement system, not the locals. The locals have always paid what has been actuarially demanded, and that's why you have 2 bills, one for the public employees and one for the police and fire, and you see the increases. So the funding for these local systems is at a very good rate. I think it's probably around 70% funding. The only danger here, or the caution, is that there's an accounting directive which says when you look at the retirement systems for both local and state, you really have to look in a combined sense. So we have a footnote in our audit report which basically says if the systems are combined, then Riveredge will now have an additional liability taking on some of that portion of the state retirement system. So we haven't gotten to the point yet where somebody has said, well, let's combine all of the systems and take the ones that are decently funded with those that are underfunded and put them together. But that is a caution that we have to really watch for the future to see that we're not impacted that way.
That has been floated by the legislature. They have mentioned that, yes.
But the locals have always done their fair share. The employees certainly contribute and have increased their contribution. So let's move on down here. Then we have the capital improvement fund. And, Mayor, I can go into the capital sheet too, once we're done with this, and we can do more of an explanation of where this increase comes from. This is on the capital side. The debt, this is the amount of bond principal payments. You can see it's down slightly this year. The interest on bonds is up. There's a slight offset here to both. We did have a bond sale in 2017. The interest on notes is down because we don't have any temporary notes now. Everything is in permanent financing. Let's see, emergencies, and then we have some deferred charges unfunded. Now, these ordinances are bond ordinances or capital items, and these are contributions to the cash or the funding of those capital items. Mayor and council, and I'll show you this later on, have had a policy for many years of balancing the amount of debt that they incur with the amount of pay-as-you-go philosophy that they can implement each year. So there's always an effort to try and pay off small items or pay down some of these bond ordinances before we get to the point of having to borrow money and incur interest and professional expenses on that. And this is an effort to do that by paying small amounts of these ordinances over the next several years. You can avoid going to the market and borrowing funds and then stretching those payments out over the years. Now, there's certainly an argument to be made for bonding and issuing debt on certain items. For instance, the improvement of roads. People who live here now are going to experience the benefit, but those people who move in 5, 10, 15 years from now will still experience a benefit from that paved road, and certainly they should pay something towards that as well. So there are arguments on both sides, but this council and councils going back for many years have said we need to balance our debt with an effort to pay as you go as well. And then the reserve fund collected tax. We'll get into a greater explanation of that in the future, but right now I've kept that number the same, just so it doesn't have an impact on the budgets that we're looking at. All right, we can move over to the capital. And to hand this out, so you have this to in front of you. This is a two-sided document, so you can put this right on top of the tab that says capital. You'll have one in there already that looks similar to this, and that's the prior year. Because councils in the past have said, yeah, let's see the current year, and let's look and see what we did last year. Just put right on top of the one that's okay, and that's what we're going to look at next.
No money free.
Just as a refresher, for the public as well, this is our capital schedule, and it's developed by the department submitting their requests to us, and also borough engineer, superintendent of public works, myself. We have a sewer subcommittee that will come up with other estimates of infrastructure projects. The sewer subcommittee is composed of the mayor. Papaleo also serves on that committee. We have the superintendent of public works, the borough engineer, our sewer operator, and myself, and we meet on an almost monthly basis to discuss water, sewer, and storm drainage issues that may be in the borough. I'm proud to say that this council is not of the mind that out of sight, out of mind. They are concerned with the infrastructure of the borough and maintaining it to avoid unnecessary costs. All right, the sheet is set up this way. We have the department that made the request in the first column. This folio number ties to your red book, so the borough clerk, if you're looking for her documentation, it's C-5, which appears in the upper right-hand corner of the capital request. So you can take a look at the detail on whatever they provided for their request. This happens, the next item is a column which we use for some other purposes. In some cases, the council is finished with the citizens on making a decision. I'll mark this off as finally decided. Then we have a short description, and then in the parens I'll put the number of the items if I have it. So this is one computer workstation in the council chambers that's being requested. Then we divide the expense down into a couple of different categories. The first category is called the CIF, the Capital Improvement Fund, and in this case, $400 would fully fund this. This is a column that goes back to your operating budget, so anything in this column will appear as part of that operating budget number. And then again, this goes to the philosophy of paying as you go. This is a small item, not worthy of bonding this out, so we're including it in this particular area. And certainly the location of these items is at my discretion at this point. So if the council and the citizens feel they want to change some of these, it's certainly at your discretion. These are just my suggestions based on past practice and philosophy, etc. Next, we have the area where we might borrow money for this particular capital purpose. We have the Capital Improvement Fund down payment. In the state of New Jersey, again, going to conservative philosophy, you can't borrow money on something without having a down payment in hand. So we are required to have a 5% down payment before we even go and think about borrowing anything. We have to have that money. So 5% of the amount of the debt that we would issue would be in this column here, the down payment column, and this also would go into your budget, your operating budget. So these two columns are going to affect your operating budget. These are the bonds that we would issue, and of course, we would finance this through temporary financing going forward or permanent debt beyond that. So this does not impact your current budget, but certainly would affect the amount of debt payments that we showed you in the budget going forward. The budget column is for anything that I might feel, well, it's really not capital. Capital is supposed to have a 5-year life. So if it doesn't, and I feel, really should go back into the budget as a full expense, then I usually put it in this column here. And again, that's subject to discussion. In many cases, we may have to go to bond counsel to make a final decision on whether something is capital or operating. In New Jersey, though, they are fairly strict about making sure you don't put a lot of capital into your operating budget. Then what I've also done here is added a column for, you might think of it as other expenses. Take the HVAC for the library, for example. Well, we see we have the down payment of $8,000. The bonds are $152,000, so that's a total cost of $160,000. But if we're going to borrow money for that, we're going to have certain expenses for that borrowing. We'll have legal, advertising. There are many other publication expenses that we might have. We might need a little bit of a contingency here. And there are what we also call 2-20 bond expenses, which means that we can put an architect or an engineering expenses in here as well. So while this is the cost of the HVAC for the library, we might need an engineering firm or an architectural firm to help us bid that out and create the specifications for it. So I'm adding another $9,600 here towards those expenses, in addition to the $160,000. So now my total is $169,600. I have total approved here because when we finally print this out, this is the total approved number. But right now, this is all discretionary at this point in time. So this will give you your final cost here. Now, if we were to take this number and divide it by 5, and then include 1/5 of that amount in our budget, as a deferred charge unfunded, I showed you where we were trying to pay off some of those bonds for our pay-as-you-go philosophy. This would be that number. So this is of interest because of the amount of borrowing that we're doing. If we're going to have deferred charges unfunded in the future, this will list those deferred charges here and what that potential impact might be on a future budget. And then I've also estimated the borrowing cost going out as well. So you'll know if we're going to borrow something, there is an additional expense in terms of interest and other expenses, and I've included that in this column as well. So you can make a judgment, you know, is it worth borrowing, or should we try to pay this off, or should we put more towards it to reduce the cost at this point in time? And that's based on going out for 10 years at a 2% interest rate. All right, Mayor, I don't know where you want to start on the capital. If you want to start with the
I
capital.
would just go to the grand totals and then
Okay.
see where we are now versus what we were last year.
Yeah, I can show you some interesting information on that too.
I think I just want to start with all over, and I still want to just maybe just do touch on the revenue side also. Just,
Well, I'm in the process of posting and proving out the general ledgers. I have all the other funds done and working on current now, so I expect to have the revenue figures the next time we meet.
I just mean in terms of seeing the overall number as to, so people have a feel of what the order of magnitude is in terms of, like last year I think it was 2 points.
Well, I can show you the revenue from last year.
Yes, and then
Yeah,
that's what I want.
I'll show you the revenue from last year and some of the categories, but I won't have the realized.
No.
All right, so looking at the down totals of those columns, this was the capital improvement fund down total, $71,991. This is the down payments, $165,000. We do a little subtotal here. This is the total on the bonding.
So I'll just so clear, the 247 is the number we saw in the CIF line in the budget, in the operating budget.
It's going to be this 252 number because I think I subtracted out the.
Oh, because you transferred the tires, okay.
Is the 5,000 here. So we're looking at bonding of over $3 million here. We're adding in the other expenses, so it's almost 3.3 million. This is the unfunded amount here, 198,000. This was one item that I put back into the budget column. I think it was tires for one of the fire trucks or engines. I'm not sure. We can discuss that. And
It was tires.
and then the total approved is almost $3.5 million. Total approved is $3.5 million. And this is the total budget impact right at this point, $252,000, which does include the $5,000 going back. So this is the other expenses that you would add in if you're bonding or something towards that figure, and then this is the unfunded $629,000. And the additional overall cost, you can see it's almost like 10% you're adding for the interest cost that you might incur if you're bonding it.
That's for 10 years.
That's for over 10 years. You really can't go out too much longer anymore. You just go out 20 years, and the market is 10 or 15 years.
I was just trying to get you one happens.
Yeah.
Last year we approved 1.074, correct? When we finally got done. I think that's
Oh,
like from.
yes, yeah, we can look at that. In fact,
So this is 150 more that we're starting off with than we did last year.
yeah, I don't have last year in front of me, but there is one other.
You gave it to us in the book,
Yeah.
on the capital page.
There's one other total
In terms of
Yeah.
overall.
Well, this is another schedule which will give you some sort of an idea as to what your targets are. So I like to say, well, you can't look at one item. We're looking at a capital improvement fund amount. Let's look at everything in our operating budget in terms of capital. So what are we spending on capital in the overall budget? And that's what this schedule does. gives you a grand total of everything in our operating budget that relates to capital improvements. So this is the capital improvement fund money for 2018 right now, exclusive of that $5,000 that you just saw. The bond principal we'll be making this year is $3.3 million. That's fixed. Bond interest is pretty much fixed. This is an old loan that we had for the library expansion. We got a low-interest loan from the Economic Development Authority, so we don't have that anymore. This is a loan from the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. We got rid of 2 pump stations and have an interlocal with Paramus to process our sewage. So this loan is coming to an end in 2019, but we still have some small carrying charges here. And this year we have deferred charges unfunded of $66,900 currently in the budget. Now, before we leave this column, let's just show you how long the council has had this philosophy. You can see we run down column H here. Basically, back to 1978, 79, they really started putting these small amounts in the budget to try and pay as you go and pay down some of this debt, so we're not incurring a tremendous amount of debt. So the discipline's been there for many years to put something towards it. We don't have any temporary debt this year. We did the year prior, so we had a little bit of note interest. So this would be temporary financing. And then usually I calculate a percent of the budget. I had it for 17. Obviously, we don't have it for 18 right now. And then a per capita amount. So these are good guides too. You can see we were a little bit higher a couple of years ago, 11%. We brought that down under the 11% number. And likewise, we were scaling up a couple of years ago on the per capita, and that's come down a little bit over the last several years now. But now with this current amount, we're at $164 per person in town. I've got the populations up here, and it was 148 in the year prior. So I like to tell the council, well, you know, this is the trend. This is what we've been doing over the years. You know, your discipline should be towards this target. You shouldn't be looking, unless you have some very extraordinary need, you know, to increase your total. This is the ballpark you're playing in, basically. And just to come down the schedule here, you can see it has grown over the years. We started incurring about $1 million in the early 90s, and it really has not grown significantly since that time. You know, to the credit of the councils and the Citizens Budget Committee, you know, we're basically at a little over $1.5 million here, and 20 years ago we were, you know, we're only at that $1 million level. So this goes back many, many years. It's important to look at trends and what the history has been to develop, you know, what your philosophy should be going forward.
Do you have a copy of that, Alan?
What's that?
Do you have a copy of that?
No, not right now, but we can print that out and get you a copy of that. So that's an overall look at our capital position through the eyes of the operating budget. Okay, let's come back to the capital. So we look at the overall increases here. So we can just do a brief rundown of what's here. Just look at some of these items here. And some of the larger increases will be for vehicles, infrastructure, and then there's really a lot of miscellaneous equipment here. So here in the Borough Clerk's area, you see a computer workstation, copier, a bulletin board for downstairs. The HVAC for the library has been discussed for several years, but over the years it's thought that a comprehensive approach to looking at this, as well as the community center, would be appropriate. They will have probably, you know, one system. The mayor could certainly talk about this in much more detail than I can, but that maybe should be looked at also in conjunction with the community center as well. We have these tan chairs here, and we thought maybe it's time to replace some of them. So this is the full amount replacement of these chairs. These chairs are all over Borough Hall in the meeting rooms. You're welcome to walk around and take a look at the status of those. But something like this can be phased in, and you should keep that in mind. That, you know, you don't always have to do do a full program, you can phase something in over the years, or postpone it to a later year, saying, look, if there's money left over in the budget, start buying them that way. You know, there are different ways to approach some of these capital items. Then we have buildings and grounds. We have a pump, I think suggested by the Department of Public Works, a renovation of the KBG field house, the demolition of 10 River Edge Road, which is the Shade Tree, currently the Shade Tree Commission location. It's having some significant roof problems, chimney problems. It has several other problems, and it might be best to consider demolishing that building. Yeah,
Alan,
maybe a couple more
the key
parking
thing
spaces.
is it has a septic system and the sewer issues. It's irreparable, so there's no way to restore the building, so it has to be demolished. So there's no option.
So we have an amount here. I did question this with bond counsel, whether it had to be an operating expense, but he has ruled that it can be considered a bondable item, so you keep that in mind. So to do this, again, you're gonna put $2,000 into your budget and then borrow the $38,000. Now, these are guesstimates too, okay, if you use that word. So, they're not all hard numbers. In some cases, the department certainly has gone out and got proposals, so they're a little bit more accurate. In other cases, we're just trying to give you the best guesses to what to put in the budget now. I mean, it could be lower once we go out to bid and see what these numbers come in at. But we need something to get into the budget at this point. Improving public sidewalks, John Lynch does try to take care of the sidewalks that are adjacent to our public facilities, and he does some replacement each year. Suggestion by emergency management that the library have a generator and that be used as a location in cases of emergencies. We have the community center. We have a subcommittee that is looking at this. We did have a finance committee meeting several weeks ago to look at this particular number. But there's more input needed on this, but again, this is a general idea as to what the number might be to finish off the community center financing. The councils over the years have very prudently put money aside for this community center, so you're not seeing the whole financing here. That's spread out over half a dozen years, and there's other financing donations and things of that sort that should go towards this as well. These come from the Recreation Commission and Recreation Director, so you can see improvements to some of our recreation facilities here. We do have another alternative funding source for some of these, the hockey rink. We have actually a couple. We have our municipal open space fund, which is a separate tax-supported fund where we'll have our hearing on that very soon. And some of these requests might be funded through our own municipal open space funding as well. In addition, the county has open space money, and applications are already made for the hockey rink and the basketball court resurfacing. And then in that case, there's a 50% match that's required, and that too could come from our open space if necessary. So these items here, while I've listed them so we don't lose sight of them, they may come off of this list once the council decides we're going to fund them in an alternative manner. And this will give you some flexibility later on. This is an estimate from our engineer to create a crosswalk at Wayne and Kinderknack. And detail on that. Now, I put traffic improvements here because it has come up from time to time. It's yellow because it's not reviewed or I don't have additional information. But if there are any other traffic improvements that need to go into capital, you know, and it's, you know, you think it's been an oversight on the part of staff that we haven't included it, please bring it to our attention. These departments have not submitted anything for capital, and then we have the Department of Public Works. We have one major need, the sewer vac, which serves a number of different purposes. Not only does it help us with sewer blockages for residential properties, commercial properties, but also it cleans out the catch basins for our storm drainage system, and has a number of other uses as well. And this is out on a daily basis. We make extensive use of it. There's a tremendous amount of corrosion that's taking place in the current vac, so this has risen to a very high priority that we look at financing it, but you can see there's a significant cost here for this piece of equipment. A couple of snow plows for the Department of Public Works. They're looking for a computer tool and some new radios. Then we get to the fire department. Fire department, here's those tires for engine 4. Like I said, we can get more information on that. They need a new storage shed for company number 2. The extractor is used to clean their suits when they come back from a fire. You know, this is not just your home washing machine and dryer. They have heavy-duty equipment that helps clean that equipment that they wear when they go into the fires. We've got a fan here. Turnout gear is what gets cleaned by the extractor. Thermal imaging camera, certainly a very essential piece of equipment for the fire department. Pagers, storage compartments, radios. Now, radios, we are looking at a grant that is out there. We have a deadline in a few weeks on this grant. So here we'd be looking at a match for the grant, either for these radios here or down here. This was a grant match with a significant budget number. They're looking at a lot of, it's best explained by the information that we have in the book or by the fire department themselves in terms of their radio needs and why the expense really is very significant. But there is a grant opportunity which might allow us to just put the match in for these radios. In addition, we have an existing ordinance. Last year, if you went back and looked at last year's schedule, we did an ordinance to fund some radios, and that could be used as part of a match for this new grant application as well, because they have not bought those radios from last year.
That was over a 3-year period, right, the radios, last year that we approved?
Well, yeah, last year they were looking at like a phase-in program.
Right.
But now they're looking at a wholesale replacement of all their radios, base stations, and everything, because there's a grant opportunity here, I guess, and there's a need. So, that has to be explored a little bit further over the next couple of
Same
weeks.
amount that we approved last year,
We bought 48 radios last year.
for $22,000.
You're saying
But
they
I
didn't
don't
buy
know
them?
if they got
We
them.
know we bonded them.
I know, but Alan's saying they didn't purchase them.
They didn't get them.
I think it doesn't go in this year budget, because already.
Right, but he's saying you could use that money towards the match. Do I
Correct.
understand, right?
Yeah, they didn't get the
Right.
radios.
So do we even need that?
We funded the
That's
money.
my
Right.
question. Same with the pages.
No,
right?
I
I still understand why it's in this year's budget.
Let me look at
Right,
CC.
If we already approved it last
We
year.
approved it last year,
Yeah, so
but
it
they
doesn't need
didn't
to be.
get the
Yeah, but you don't have to
radio.
we don't have to approve it again, then.
Correct. But now we're
Unless it's
looking
an
at,
additional
Pages also,
requirement.
$4,000 and upgrade last year.
yeah,
Pages.
But they didn't get them? Did they get the pagers last year?
pages, I'm not sure, I know they didn't get the radios.
See, radio replacement, second of 3 installments as per the agreement with Mayor and Council budget to replace our portable radios. That's the explanation they put. So last year you had phase 1, this is phase 2, and there might be another phase 3 in 2019 budget. If you go for this grant, you may be able to do the whole thing in one shot.
The radios are costing $66,000.
The new radios they're looking at are much more significant.
Very.
And I will tell you, they have an estimate right now, 300,000, and this is our match towards that 300,000.
There's not that many-
Subject to change.
I mean, we would have bought in 2 years then, or appropriated 96 radios? We don't have that many firefighters.
3 years. That's 40 years.
We just don't have that many firefighters for 96 radios.
Plus, they're stacking the cost for 45 radios. You know what I'm saying? It's a third each year. When they get the final year, then they'll go out and change 45 radios.
So 15 radios is $22,000. No, that's
They're very.
That's the math,
very-
Mayor, but,
They're very expensive.
I think you need to talk to the fire officers,
Yeah, well,
especially with what this this
No, I'm not-
application is looking.
Yeah. I mean, because that grant is doubling up the other stuff that's on there, right? Like it's
Well, this
duplicative?
grant might replace this, or
Okay.
this might be part of the match down here,
Okay.
plus the 20-some odd thousand you had from the year prior. So now you got $40,000 towards this 126. This number needs to be revised because I had based it on 3 towns going in on this application, and now Oradell has pulled out.
They backed out.
So
I
this
don't
has to
think
be
it's gonna happen.
recalculated. It might come down, I'm not sure.
I don't think they're gonna do that one.
Maybe
George
not.
O'Connell wasn't for it either.
So,
Um,
more
But there is
information
that
needed
second
here, but
grant.
It's on our list.
Yeah, I mean, we probably need them to come in, because yeah.
I'm gonna meet with George this week.
Okay, then we have a siren
confusing.
system. I'm not familiar with what they're looking for this year. We have seen different siren systems come in, so that will have to be discussed. And 2 more command vehicles, replacements. I know there's been some questions on that, and refurbishing of Rescue 1, which is a significant vehicle cost in this year's capital budget. Let's see, chairs, road resurfacing. This is always a guess at this point. We do have a schedule of roads that need to be repaired, but frankly, it's always limited by the amount of funding that is made available to us. So we look at, the roads that have the highest priority and try and fit it into the allocation that we've been given for that year. But to the compliment of this council and other prior councils, there's always been a very good discipline of putting something towards road resurfacing and our infrastructure. So what you're not looking at is $1 million or $2 million project in 1 year to try and catch up on all of these roads in 1 year. We do a little bit each year, and we have done that for 40 years, going back as long as I've been. Then we have stormwater requirements. This comes from the sewer subcommittee. We're looking at placing an allocation into the capital budget so that we can do a series of repairs and improvements around town. We need 2 types of money. We need money to actually go in and cure some sewer and stormwater problems. And then we do need some money in capital for emergency situations. There's been some broken water pipes with the 60-degree temperature we had the other day and the very low temperatures. Well, typically, I can tell you, as long as I've been here in April, when April rolls around, we have road collapses, sewer collapses, and we need to go in on an emergency basis and make those repairs. We can avoid having emergencies in our operating budget by putting a little money aside in our capital and having that available. We do have some money in an existing ordinance, but that will probably be needed for repairs to emergency situations come April. So this money really here is requested to look at some projects going forward. Sidewalk highway improvement program, I don't have anything here right now, but this is to try and look at some innovative techniques to level some of the sidewalks around town. They have like some techniques of shaving down the sidewalks or putting foam to level them off. So in the prior year, we put about $10,000 here to try and get a company to come in and try some of those. We haven't been successful at doing that yet.
Is this residential or is this?
Yeah, this would be, because the municipal, we're doing some replacements. This is to try some residential. And then if we have a technique that works, a low-cost technique, try and make that available to the public somehow. So, you may want to put some money in here to try and take that.
We did previously approve money for that.
We did, and we used some of it for another purpose, and we weren't able to find these companies to come in and actually show us on a pilot basis how this might work. I know John Lynch did reach out to them. Then we have some requests from the library. Some of these, the library is looking at for the bond that was approved by referendum. We don't have the debt yet on the library bond, but the state did go out on referendum and saying, we'd like the public to approve a bond authorization for library improvements. So there is the possibility of an application. I think that's in your correspondence. Barry's talking about that, the library director. And the HVAC for the library might be a project that we could get a grant on through the state. So we might have a low cost match there. Some of these items also, a public service desk in the children's area might be funded through there. The children's circulation desk, this might be a duplication of the town I'm looking at. I have to go back and take a look at this. But there are a couple of items, improvements in the library that might be done through this grant rather than our capital or operating budgets. Recreation has a couple of requests, a few more AEDs. We want to put a couple more, one down in Memorial Park where the camp staff is. Police department, they have another patrol vehicle they would like to purchase. They have to replace cameras. There's a bulletproof vest here. Generally, we have 2 grants that we get for these vests, but we have to have a match. So there's one from the federal government that we get bulletproof grant, so we've used that to buy vests, and then there's a state body armor, but we do need a match portion, and we're allowed to do this through capital. So this is the bulletproof vest match.
What is that one above the assault body?
The alcohol.
Alcohol.
Yeah, that's a DWI piece of equipment. And I think that needs to be replaced. That's why it has a significant expense there. These are the target curtains for the police pistol range, and they stop any ricochets. So this is an essential piece to the pistol range. The chief always does computer replacement on a phase-in basis. So we've got the radios and the computers that looking at that. Sign replacement. These are your various traffic signs around. Radar, piece of a radar, and a pistol range renovation, the significant cost here, looking at the renovation of the pistol range. I guess there's more information on that if you look at C13, which will go to your so that's an overview of the capital there.
And everybody has submitted their request at this point, as far as you know?
Yes, for capital and operating budgets, yes, I have all of the requests in at this point. I don't know if you want to take a break here.
Yeah, and I'll just ask you, maybe for the next time, if you can maybe, you gave us last year's approved capital, I'd like to see it for the previous couple of years in part.
Sure.
We'll take a break and then we can decide where to proceed from there. 10-minute break?
Yeah.
Alan? Come. I got good timing, don't I?
You want me with the bagel in my mouth?
Finish it, go ahead, don't take it down.
This is a revenue projection from last year. I don't have the current numbers. I expect to calculate the realized revenues for this year, this coming week. And then we'll start working on the annual financial statement, which will effectively close out the general ledger for the operating fund and give us the fund balance of what you call surplus number. But you'll be looking at this schedule in the future. We have down the left-hand side the different types of revenues that we can have in our budget. There are 4 major revenue sources. There's this surplus, which is, as we say, fund balance left over from the prior year. We'll get into our fund balance policy and where we stand with that and what we can use in the budget, and according to that policy, and what must be reserved. Then we have as the second category miscellaneous revenues anticipated. And this is broken down into licenses, fines and costs, fees and permits, interest and costs on taxes, interest on investments, deposits, parking lot fees, uniform construction code fees, cable television fees, sale of asset money, police outside duty, and I have in brackets here money that we get from the state. We have energy receipts, taxes, Uniform Fire Safety Act, and the Garden State Preservation Fund. We receive a small amount of money on that. This is the triangle down at the lower end of town. It was previously owned by the state, and they've been making a payment in lieu to us, which has been, it was being phased out. It's kind of stabilized at this point, but we expect this to go away in the future as well. Then there are a series of grants that are either present at the time that we adopt the budget or we amend our budget to include these grants through the year. So here you can see we have a recycling tonnage grant that we get. This is for the court. They receive grant funding for DWI work that they do. Clean Communities Program. We have a housing inspection program. This is the Alliance on Drug and Alcohol Abuse. The Green Communities Program, if we have that in this particular year. There's a DWI grant. Nursing services for non-public schools. The police department has a grant for seatbelt safety or driving while intoxicated. Here are the two body armor grants. Then through the county community development block grant, we get the county, we get a grant for senior activities, and another one for our senior bus and dispatch.
But Alan, just to be clear, all the grants have an offsetting appropriation, so it's not really a net
Yes.
revenue.
The grants don't have an effect on our budget, that's correct, Mayor, because there's an offsetting appropriation. This is funding that we get from the county for plowing county roads, so you'll see something to include that for 2018. If you get a donation from a resident or someone else, that can be added to the budget. So this was a donation the police department had received, and then we have a program for memorial benches that during the year if somebody donates money, they get a bench. The third major revenue source is delinquent taxes. So in any one year, we don't collect 100% of our taxes, although this one you're very, very good about getting that percentage very close to 100%. But there's still a small portion of people who don't pay their taxes on time. So we are allowed to include as a revenue source in our current budget the taxes from the prior year that will be paid in the current year. So that is another source of revenue that we have coming in towards the budget. And then this gives you the three major sources. The only one we're missing here is property taxes. So after we calculate these three major sources of revenue, then we know what this offset will be to our appropriations, and the balance is really going to have to come from your property taxes. We will get into the limitations that the state has imposed on both our spending side as well as the tax levy side. Okay, we have two cap limitations on what we can do with the budget. So what you'll see next time we meet is we'll have the 2017 budget revenues here as it was amended by mostly these grants. And then what we actually realized against these revenue sources by the end of that year, and whether there was an excess or a deficit and what the percentage was. Then this column is reserved for the new year. This is all prior year information. This is what the mayor and council, et cetera, will come up with a final approved number on the revenue sources. The budget document requires that we show what the prior year revenue sources were and their realized amounts, because another conservative method of accounting in New Jersey is that the amount of anticipated revenue in your budget, this column, generally cannot exceed what you realized in revenue in the year prior. So that sort of places a limitation on your expectations for some of these numbers. You know, it allows a very conservative look at these revenue sources. So, for instance, you'll see, when you look at the new numbers, you'll see some large increases in the uniform construction code fees. You know, while there was a large increase here, you'll have to factor in yourself, why is that such a large increase? Well, We had a new development on Kinnecamack Road that really boosted up the amount of permit fee for that one particular year. Is that gonna happen again in 2018? Probably not. So maybe you should not be anticipating too close to that current realized number. So while there is a statutory limitation, there's still a certain amount of common sense that you have to apply to these revenue figures as well.
And as far as the other categories, the uncollected taxes, it's gonna be the same order of magnitude it is now. There won't be much play on that number, I would assume. And like you're saying, I think with the general revenues, we're going to see maybe some increase in some line items, but I think overall, it's not gonna be much more than we have now. So I don't know if we're gonna have much benefit in increased revenues. Point being is that we're not gonna, usually we can make up the budget by getting some decreases on the spending side, a little increase on the income side. I think it's gonna be harder to do that this year because I don't think the increase in the revenue is going to be significant, which means it's gonna require more reduction on the appropriation side.
This is a challenging year, Mayor.
From that
I haven't seen
perspective.
numbers like this, in quite some time on the operating side.
Now, like you saw the schedule, we've had similar percentages, but I think this year it's tighter on both sides as to what we can move around. But we'll get there.
All right. Just to show you some of the other screens that you'll be looking at in the future. So this is the revenue one. Then we'll do a tax rate calculation, and this really starts with this calculation on what we call the reserve for uncollected taxes to give you a sense of what that $500,000 number is. You look at the total appropriations, excluding the RUT, and this comes directly from this appropriation schedule that we looked at before. We subtract out the revenues, which came from the revenue schedule. We come up with net appropriations. Then we have to add in the tax levy amounts, estimated tax levy amounts from the regional school, the local school, county plus the open space, and the actual municipal open space levies. Because we have to collect these taxes also. So we're really collecting about $50 million in taxes, and our reserve for uncollected tax calculation has to be based on all of the taxes, not just our own situation. Because we collect the taxes for these entities and pay them over to them during the year. We are allowed to estimate what that collection rate will be for, this will be 2018. You can see last year we had 98.90%, and that will calculate the reserve for uncollected tax, which is then going to get added back into the budget to complete our operating expenses. So then to calculate the tax rate, we're looking at the assessed value. Now we look at the appropriations plus the reserve for uncollected tax. We subtract out the revenue, those three sources of revenue that we had before, and we come up with the local tax levy. And we're splitting out here the library levy. And Mayor, I saw your note on the calculation differences here, so I'll go back and take a look at that. Thank you for pointing that out. But a couple of years ago, the state came up and said you must now split out the library amount, the mandatory library amount on your tax bill, and make that a separate tax rate calculation. So that's what we do here. The $500,000 that you see here for the library is based on what they call the third of a mil. And a free public library is allowed to have a floor on the amount of funding they receive from the library based on the assessed value of the town. In your correspondence, we have a better explanation of what that is, so we can take a look at that and then show you what the third of the mill is. But here we're breaking out the library portion from the local tax levy, and then we come up with the local tax rate based on the division of the local tax levy and the assessed valuation here. It's important to keep in mind what 1 penny on the tax rate or 1 cent is equal to. And an easy way to figure that is to look at the value of the 1 point in terms of flat dollars, either for revenue or appropriations. And what I mean by that is, if you wanted to decrease the tax rate by 1 point, how much revenue would you have to increase from those 3 other sources? Or how much would you have to cut from the budget for that 1 cent? Well, it'll come down to what these numbers are, generally in this $145,000 area. So if we want to decrease the tax rate by 1 cent, we're going to need another $145,000 in revenue, or we're going to have to cut the budget by $145,000.
And that equals $38 on the average house, because the average house is $383 something.
We will recalculate that too, but then we'll go to this screen and we'll look at the tax impact of that rate. Last year we had this 92 cents. We compare it to the year prior, and we come up with the amount of dollar change. And I've always done it for all these different values, so you can pick out a value in River Edge and look at the tax increase based on those values. The typical, I call it the typical, we had last year 385,000. How do we come up with that? We take the total value of our residential properties, and this is based on the County Board of Taxation's tax duplicate. We divide it by the number of residential properties, and we come out with, you want to call it average, you want to call it median, mode. I like to call it typical because I get arguments from a lot of different people as to what that number actually represents. The real estate community will have another version on it.
It's a true average, because you're taking the total dividing by the total number, so it's an
So
average.
that's how I,
But
so
the
just so you
median
know
is
how I
not,
come up with the number.
yeah, but the median is actually probably lower than that, because most of the houses are assessed less than 500,000.
So we'll calculate the tax rate here. The increase will appear on this schedule here, and then for these, I do these schedules separately at 400, 450, 500, and here's the typical of 385. And then just for discussion purposes, okay, your tax increase is X number of dollars. What services are you getting for it? And what do you really, what is the tax, the impact on an annual basis, a weekly basis, monthly, even daily? Some people like to talk, well, it's only costing you 30 cents a day for your recreation, your roads, your garbage, your police protection, your fire protection, your ambulance services, and you could go on in your library services, So when you break it down that way, it's another dollar. It's another dollar. And that's what this schedule. Now, the one footnote I have here is, even though you may come to a conclusion on what this tax rate is, just keep in mind that the County Board of Taxation actually strikes your rate. And when they do this, there is some rounding that takes place. So if, for instance, you came to the conclusion that we're going to have a zero impact this year, we're going to have no municipal tax rate increase, when we get to the county, they may decide that this rounding effect is going to make a slight increase in the municipal rate. So the footnote's always here that these are estimated until the county strikes the rate. There is a little rounding that always takes place, and the rate may appear when it finally comes out a little bit differently. Okay, and then this footnote is attributed to a former citizen budget member who debated my typical number, and so I've always included this since his time to provide a little bit of additional explanation on his analysis of the residential properties and how many are above that 385, how many are below, and what the effect is on that as well. All right, Mayor, so that's the tax rate schedule, and this is the, the ultimate place that we'll end up after we get through the capital, the tax rate, the revenue, the appropriation. Now, there is a cap calculation that we'll have to do, and this is on the spending side. So what we will look at here is we'll take our general appropriations, and then the state has said, well, there are certain exceptions to the cap on your spending side. There are certain operations that can be excluded from this cap. There's debt service. Certainly, they don't want to limit you on debt service. The deferred charges, the RUT, so we'll come up with a net number, and then the state will come out with their limitation. And this year, you can see they gave us a 0.5% increase. The mayor and council had the option of increasing it by ordinance to 3.5%, which doesn't mean that they spend this amount of money, but what they're creating is the flexibility for additional spending authority sometime in the future, because this becomes a bank that they can take advantage of over the next couple of years, only if it's needed. And then once we apply one of these amounts, we come up with a new spending limitation. You can see these are the older bank amounts here, which would increase the amount that we are allowable. So your appropriations have to fit under this cap as well. And we'll be looking at this in more detail later on. This is a little schedule I do each year on the discretionary amount that you have available to you. I'm looking at the change of 1 year over the next, and then taking out these larger increases or decreases in these particular categories, because these are all kind of non-discretionary areas. They have certain salary and wages which are based on collective bargaining agreements. You have debt, you have sewer payments, you have bills that we receive from pensions. So all of this has to come out. And of the increase in this particular year, there's $750,000 that you had no choice over. You have a choice over a little less than $500,000. So 60% of your budget, right off the top, you have no choice about what you can do with it. You're down to 40% of the budget in terms of what you have some discretion over. And this 40% really goes to the services that you provide, you know, the frontline services that you provide. So that's what makes this difficult. And then, just by way of information, I have what's called the log, and this will be updated each time. So you know that we've sent out all of the budgets to you via email. If there's going to be changes on any of those documents, we'll provide an explanation of those changes and what we've done to the position summary. So these are some changes that we made since you last looked at it. The garbage, these are the account numbers, other expenses or salary and wages. This is the garbage line. We increased it slightly for a couple of additional pickup days. We're doing a change order on that at the next public meeting. So we added $2,600 to that particular line. The land use board, we had a resignation of our board secretary, so we're looking at an outside service to provide minutes for 3 months. That's our cost for doing that, so we changed the budget there. Here's the, we have to allocate some of our health insurance to the library. We show that separately to help us with our cap calculation, but that has no net effect when you look at these two numbers. And here's the copay being applied to the library, which brought it down from $1,126,000 to $901,000. The employees contributed $225,000 in copay towards their health insurance. And then this is money we got back from the county for the January snowstorm. So we'll continue to fill this out, and any changes that the council makes and the citizens make, we will log those changes in here too. So this is last year's change list. So these are all the changes you made to get your number. You made close to 100 changes last year from this point going forward in the budget. So there's still a lot of work to be done on this.
Is there a net number at the bottom of that list? Is there a net number at the
No,
bottom?
I really don't, because it's up and down, yeah, I don't total it up there. No. But, as you know, we went from over $1 million down to, you know, about $100,000 last year. So it's a lot of changes. And reductions.
Roughly that 40%.
Yeah, I'm gonna recalculate it for our current numbers, we'll show that to you next week, the discretionary. Well, you know, like the BCUA bill, that's an actual bill that we got, which is going to be a change for the estimates that we have in there now, so, that's not part of the discussion, it can certainly help us once we get the bill.
We really only have 4 areas where we can look at these reductions. 2 right off the bat, I'll mention them, our engineering estimates and our legal. Those are always things which we always have a wish list for, and that will necessarily come down. We can reduce the total salary increases on the discretionary side, based on what department heads may be asking in terms of either extra hours or extra personnel. And last one. So those are the 3 things on this, and the capital. Obviously, that's the 4th part. So that's what we're going to focus in most of the talk with the capital, but we know what target we have to get to, so it's going to be more about deciding priorities, and we'll see where we are with the revenue and the overall fund balance.
The assessed value, I thought on one of the screens, seemed to have gone up this year.
Yeah, it went up slightly.
Yeah.
That's local residential.
Yeah, those are the added assessments, either what they call added assessments, if somebody does an addition and the tax just goes out, or like this year, we had the new McDonald's got reassessed, so that would have been included there.
Is there any anticipation?
Well, this is already done for this year. It goes back to previous October. So this year, we'll probably have that new building that's going up at the bottom of Reservoir. That's really the only significant construction that's going on this year. You know, there's no other major plans approved at this point. So, you know, we look at several $1 million usually in residential improvements over the course of the year.
There's nothing on the horizon to increase the revenue.
You know. And basically, you know, the theory is that only expands the pie. You know, that's what the total assessment does. So, you know, I was equivalent like a waterbed, you know, it fluctuates. The total money you collect can only be the total money you collect. The levy is the levy. So if you bring in more tax revenue that one year because of the assessments, you don't get that every year. The next year, your whole base goes up, so that all gets slid back over, you know, all the other taxpayers. So you only get that benefit for that one calendar year when you get the addeds. Yeah. But it's not permanent. Like, you hear a lot of people saying that, you know, this is the ratables are revenue. Well, they're really not revenue. They basically expand the base so you can bring down everybody else by a little.
Yes, just a brief thought. Has there been any hint of direction with regard to the Oregon/Silver Edge issue? That's just floating out there with the
Still under.
funding and...
Yeah, we're waiting for a decision from the court. At some point they have.
So I think, in terms of the capital island, I would ask, our police liaison, our DPW liaison, and our fire liaison to just review those with their respective departments, if there's anything that can be reduced, or maybe phased in, or whatever, maybe with some way to do it. We'll start that way on the capital side.
You want to look at an overview of legal or engineering, right?
I don't know. At this point, I think that part of the engineering is gonna rely on what we do in capital.
I don't have capital up here.
No, I said that's what it's gonna all come, so I don't think do anything at this point to go into it. I think next time we'll actually start with trying to book some changes. That makes sense, everybody?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did the engineering money come from? Did it come from our engineer, or did it come from the...
No, it's usually a guesstimate on my part. Let me see if I can get to it. It's right up. This is the engineering listing. So for 2018, this is the retainer paid to the borough engineer, $5,000. I've got this other general grouping of $200,000, which is really a salary of all of these different items here. And this is extra DEP engineering, a sewer emergency, and a contract with the borough engineer, so we have an emergency, he's on the scene. Any traffic consulting studies, $7,000. We don't have a grant consultant. And I have some money in here for a redevelopment planner and any engineering related to redevelopment, so, you know, this goes to your timing and whether how much you think might be going on in redevelopment, but this is an area certainly that you could look at. And then as you come down the list here, you know, I'm open to suggestions. Please help me out here as to what you think might be a duplication in capital or what might not take place. Here I have the COLR planner, but I might have more money for a COLR planner in another spot, so, you know, I just don't want to lose sight of these things. Here you see I have the demolition, but I might have put this together before I did the bond ordinance, knowing that it could go into the bond ordinance. So you could certainly modify this particular thing based on what you see. Sometimes we may have the ability to get a grant or to do a capital bond ordinance, but we need preliminary money in engineering, even though it is a capital project or we're going to have a grant application. We need the engineering to get it done. So that's why you see some money here. For instance, you've got a community development block grant. This would be some design work on future applications for the block grant. This is a project, Riverside Road, to straighten out the curve developed by the railroad tracks. Again, that is not this year. So there's a lot of flexibility here, but we just need to come to some conclusion as to what our numbers should be for 2018.
We will reconvene next Saturday.
Our next scheduled date is for next Saturday, same time, 8 o'clock.
Anybody, yes?
I just have two comments, I guess, maybe. The Kinnick Road and Wayne crossing, I'm not sure where it was. It seemed like it was an awful lot of money to cross the street.
No, it's not. The issue there is that this is to put a crosswalk at Wayne and Kinnickinnick, and on the east side of Kinnickinnick, going from the crosswalk to the bus stop, there's no sidewalk. So if we put a crossing, we have to have a safe sidewalk, and that runs about another 75 feet. So that's what the cost is.
It was like 23,000.
Yeah, that's about
It
it.
seemed like an awful lot of money.
No, that's exactly what the cost. We do, and there is a duplicate in the sense that we do have a grant to put sidewalk over there, but the state process has been so slow. I mean, we've been working on this for 3 years now, and this is something that people have been requesting. We do have an issue because there's a bus stop there, so we do have a lot of pedestrian traffic. So that's why the council had decided to ask Mr. Costa, what would it cost us to do that one piece? And that's why we have it now.
That's basically a sidewalk to nowhere, right?
Well, it's going to a bus stop.
It goes to the bus
It goes
stop.
to
Goes to the bus stop.
Yes, yeah, no, the sidewalk to nowhere is gone. That was the sidewalk.
More than that, there's also families that have kids that go to church, go across that street.
Yeah, no,
They're pretty much aware of that,
But it is a limited piece of sidewalk.
Yeah, no, we're not talking about doing that going south again on the cliff. That made no sense.
Okay, so you go from north.
Well, going north, the grant will cover from Wayne essentially up to the strip mall.
Oh, okay. I
When-
thought it was just.
But not the,
Oh, no, this
not
is
the
right
estimated
now.
cost will not.
No, this is just for that one piece.
Correct.
But the whole grant we
Correct.
have will
Right.
pay for the whole
Right.
going north, which makes more sense than going south.
Right.
So that's what we're looking at. Now, maybe we should follow up again.
I'm sorry?
We should rattle their cage a little bit, Alan, and see what's going
Yes,
on.
where I'm at right now was, I had reached out to their grant person, maybe a month and a half ago. And we may have reconciled our differences over the certification that has to be done. She finally got back to me with some of her responses on some of my questions. And then she said the next step is for us to have a contract to engage the state-approved engineering firm that's doing the design. And I reached out to another town where she had talked about, they had a good model agreement. So I reached out to the finance officer that I know from there, he got me the agreement. So now I can get that agreement in front of the council.
But the question was, we met with them heading with a year ago, with the engineers. And we had scoped out not just that, we looked at improvements at Wayne and Bogart and a couple other
Depends on
places.
how she reacts to it.
And they were supposed to come back with us with an estimate, so we know what work we can get done under the grant, because I think the amount of work they looked at scoping is gonna be in excess of that, and we don't have the flexibility to do that, so they were supposed to get
I
back.
don't know if they're gonna do that until they get under contract.
But you can't get into contract, that's based on what the scope is. So now it's a chicken and egg thing. So why should we do a contract and have them design $600,000 worth of improvements when we can only do $350? So they need to reconcile that and tell us, based on the scope they laid out to us, what percent, what the capital cost would be for those improvements. And then we have to add them together and see which one we can do into the project.
That bus, and that crosswalk is at the north end of Wayne.
Correct.
Timbercraft Road?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a consideration of putting in crosswalk signs?
Oh, no, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, further down further south on Timbercraft Road? Because you got a bend there on the Timbercraft.
Yes, and there's always been a concern about putting a crosswalk there because of that, but the chiefs looked at it, the traffic engineers looked at it, and everybody seems to be okay that we can put a safe crosswalk there.
If there's a bus stop there,
Yeah.
people are gonna cross that road.
Yeah, well, people cross anywhere anyway, but,
So, I mean, you gotta give them, you gotta give them some opportunity to cross both roads in a safe place.
yes, but, and I don't want to get into a debate with them, but I think transit has an obligation also, when they put their stops in places that are inaccessible. So they're the ones also should be saying, you know what, this isn't a good place to have a bus stop. So, or either say we have to move it, eliminate it, or chip into the cost to give it a safe location, so, but, we know we're not gonna get it with them, so we actually have to just do it proactively on our own.
Okay, well, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you all again for volunteering this year. We're looking forward to getting this done sooner rather than later, and see you next week.
Wait, are we definitely,
Yes, oh, definitely, yes.
do we wanna do any other firm dates or just?
The whole schedule's been laid out.
Oh, we're gonna hold that as a firm? Usually we hold that as a tentative.
It is, that's what it is, so we can decide time to time.
Do we need to,
We'll see, I think,
maybe more?
we'll make some progress on the capital, and we'll actually, we'll see what we want. It's gonna be- Yeah. Alan, would you be able to put together a table on when you said the tax rate that we finalized on our document? First, what the final tax rate is that was struck by the county. Can you do a history of that, Elaine?
Yeah, I mean, the apportionment tax, it shows the final tax rate, and it shows the amount of.
I'm just curious to see how much.
It's much less, there were major complaints going back several years. How much it really is, using class. And the county refined their computer system to get that,